Bhakti's practice in ISKCON. So if you cover it, then it's good. Then we are
Yeah,
we are good.
I'll be doing.
Okay. Don't start now. I mean, you can start, but
Okay, once again.
I want to bring up the intro.
Yeah, actually your setting, no, there is some. You have to actually you have set it only for a few of your friends, so I have to change that once again.
But as a change तो किया नहीं वैसे. Last time, like last few sessions we had was always.
I have to make it public actually.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's done.
Okay, so we wait for Swati Mataji.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm just sharing on my Facebook page also.
Okay.
Okay. ओम अज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Let me also start the recording. I think they have updated Zoom. I can see apps also here.
Okay.
I don't know what is that exactly, but we'll experiment next time. Okay, all right. So let's start.
Yeah. Okay, welcome, Premnasa Das Prabhu. Thank you very much for continuing the session that we were having on Raganuga Bhakti in ISKCON, and a little bit of introduction for anyone who may not know you. You're pretty famous now. So His Grace Premnasa Das Prabhu is a businessman, and he hails from the city of Mumbai, the commercial capital of India. And he's a disciple of His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. He has been practicing Krishna consciousness for over a decade. Very scholarly devotee who regularly reads Srila Prabhupada's books and those written by other Gauriya Vaishnava acharyas, translated by our ISKCON devotees. He has rendered incredible services to Srila Prabhupada's movement and has the unique distinction of being among the world's top 3 Srimad Bhagavatam distributors in the last 4 years. This is really incredible. I just like to keep repeating it because it's really some monumental achievement in Srila Prabhupada's service. So Prabhuji is conducting online service classes regularly to systematically educate and guide devotees in Krishna consciousness. And he holds a master's degree in aerospace engineering from the prestigious University of Florida. So with that, I would like to hand it over to Premnasa Das Prabhu for taking it forward on part 2 of practicing Raganuga Bhakti in ISKCON. Over to you, Prabhu.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Charitra, for the kind introduction, although I don't deserve that kind of praise. And thank you so much for being an active participant in all the programs and hosting. So, okay, so let's continue with our second part. Basically, in the first part, we covered living in Braj and Raganuga Bhakti. So we can just go through it. I will summarize the last class. And so there were 2 sections of the last class, living in Braj and Raganuga Bhakti. So in Raganuga Bhakti, we have covered that how we have to be careful not to become Sahajias, we have, because there is qualification required, and the qualification is greed. And because the qualification is greed, that's why devotees can take it for granted, and they think, probably they start thinking that we have the greed, but it is not necessary that everyone has the greed. And the greed has to be steady, and obviously one has to be free from all the anarthas in order to practice Raganuga Bhakti. So that we have discussed. And then I've quoted some Prabhupada disciples, who had been instructed by Prabhupada, especially regarding the practicality of Radhanuga Bhakti in ISKCON. So it's not necessary that one has to follow the exoteric part of Raganuga Bhakti. One can also, because Prabhupada actually gave the path of revelation, and this is what he consistently instructed all the disciples also, that we cannot artificially imitate, and we should even we should always give preference to our service. Especially Prabhupada actually wanted that everyone should preach and everyone should be connected to some service. So that was given most importance and priority. So this is what actually Prabhupada recommended. And then how Prabhupada also indicated that one may realize one's rasa with the Lord by understanding, or by getting a hint of how we are actually getting attracted to the pastimes of the Lord. So there are different pastimes of the Lord in different rasas, and the whichever pastime is attracted, like we get attracted to in the most favorable way, or which is very, especially very inspiring to us. So that can actually indicate our ras also. And Prabhupada was concerned about the premature execution of the exoteric practice of Raganuga Bhakti. So he has also written some letters to disciples, which we have shared earlier. And regarding, we have also gone through the definition of Raganuga Bhakti. What is Raganuga Bhakti? Basically, Raganuga Bhakti is defined as spontaneous deep thirst for the object of love. And bhakti that is impelled exclusively by such a thirst is called Ragatmika Bhakti. And then we also saw the qualification of Raganuga Bhakti. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, basically. And obviously it involves the following of the residents of Braj. And a part of practice of Raganuga Bhakti is, or the most favorable part, in fact, I would say it is actually one of the most important elements, is we can reside in Braj and practice that. But then we also discussed who can live in Braj, and how many days one can live in Braj, whether to live in Braj or whether to preach outside, and what is the meaning of living in Braj. So I've shared a lot of references also for the same. So this is a brief summary of what we discussed in the last class. And now today I would specifically like to address how Raganuga Bhakti is actually practiced in ISKCON, or it can be practiced in ISKCON. First of all, obviously, I lack the qualification to address this issue, but what I will be presenting is what I hear from senior devotees, and whatever realizations they have shared about this topic, and my own personal experience and realization also about this. So first of all, it's not necessary that everyone in this ISKCON is practicing Raganuga Bhakti, or they are inclined to practice Raganuga Bhakti, which is quite okay. Because as I mentioned earlier, that the path of Raganuga Bhakti is revealed to us. It is basically whatever our identity is, and then which devotee we are most attracted to, the associate of Krishna in spiritual world. These things are all actually revealed to us. It is not something where we can purchase, by, we cannot purchase the Lord, we cannot purchase the process of bhakti, and we have to make attempt, we have to struggle, we have to also prove that we are ready for that. So, okay, one second. Yeah. So the most important principle is the qualification. Now, whether first, I mean, like let me start by saying that This is Raganuga practice is not something which is mandatory in terms of its exoteric form. No doubt, there is no doubt that if you want to attain Radha and Krishna in Braj, then we have to follow in the footsteps of their associates. There is no doubt about it. Unless and until we follow in the footsteps of Brajvasis and we cultivate similar sentiments and mood, which is, basically the bhav that they have for the Lord, unless and until we cultivate that kind of feelings, it's not possible to actually enter in Braj. Now, obviously, in Golok Vrindavan, there are different sections. We have the Mathura section, Dwarka section, and then we have the, Gokul or Braj. And even amongst Braj, there are sections. So basically, one can represent Aishwarya Dham and one can represent Madhurya Dham, even in Goloka. So now when we say Goloka, it can be misleading sometimes because Goloka is generally referred to as the complete abode of Krishna, which is including Mathura, Dwarka, Mathura, and Vrindavan or Gokul. So the center portion is where we can actually experience the highest sweetness of the Lord, and it is completely sweet. There is no tinge of Aishwarya Bhava. There is no tinge of awe and reverence in that particular realm. And that particular realm has sections of Gokul and Vrindavan. And Radha and Krishna, they are actually residing in Vrindavan in their original forms. And in Gokul, there are expansions. The expansion or the expanded forms of Radha and Krishna are residing where they are married, basically. So there is, there is, the concept of Parakiya and Swakiya Ras in Gokul, in Braj, basically. And depending on the mood of the devotees, if they want, they can execute complete sweetness. They can perform devotional service, which will be completely sweet, where there's no tinge of awe and reverence. But if someone wants a mixture of both of them, then they can attain the Lord in Goloka in a section where they are actually, although like Vishwanath Thakur mentions in his commentary in one of the verses of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that whoever wants to worship the Lord, and specifically, generally it is mentioned that if you want to worship Krishna without following the footsteps of gopis, then you attain Dwarka. But if your object of worship is not Rukmini Dwarkadish, and if your object of worship is Radha and Krishna, then you attain Radha and Krishna in a section of Goloka where they are worshipped in Aishwarya Bhava. So when you have a mixture of both Aishwarya and Madhurya, then you attain a lower rasa compared to complete sweetness, complete Madhurya ras, which is there in Vrindavan. So Radha Krishna are worshipped completely in Madhurya ras in Vrindavan, and it is Parakiya ras. So basically, in the spiritual world, the Parakiya ras and the Swakiya ras exist simultaneously. And depending on the bhava of the devotee, they will attain that particular abode of the Lord. So basically, what is Raganuga Bhakti? Now the foundational principle of Raganuga Bhakti is selfless service. Okay. Obviously, we have heard about this pastime where Narad Muni is meeting the Dwarka Mahishis and the gopis of Vrindavan. And then basically to prove that the gopis of Vrindavan are superior in their love to Krishna compared to the Dwarka Mahishis. So we know that Krishna has a headache, and then Narad Muni wants to find a solution for that. So Krishna is giving him some hint in order to prove the supremacy of the gopis. So then he says that whoever will actually gather the dust of their lotus feet and if they can give me that, then that will cure my headache. So he goes to the Dwarka Mahishis, and Dwarka Mahishis, they are hesitant because they consider the Lord to some degree as their master. So they can't even imagine that they can give the feet, the dust of their feet to the Lord. So they are kind of afraid to go to hell. But when Narad Muni approaches the gopis of Vrindavan, then without any thinking, without any thought, immediately they are willing to sacrifice and give, even if that, what they say is that even if the even if this dust can relieve Krishna of a millisecond or a moment, and for that we are willing to go to hell eternally. So that kind of love they have, that kind of intensity they have, just for a moment's relief to Krishna, they are willing to undergo hell forever. That is the type of love that the gopis of Vrindavan have. And the acharyas also say that the gopis of Vrindavan, they love Krishna to such a degree that there is no tinge of personal sense gratification or desire to enjoy Krishna. Whereas the Dwarka Mahishis, they have some tinge of personal sense gratification. They want to enjoy Krishna in a particular way. So that's why there is a variation and a difference between their love and the love of the gopis. So this particular principle is applicable, this Raganuga Bhakti is applicable for, in order to become an associate of Krishna in Vrindavan, where there is complete Madhurya. Okay, no tinge of Aishwarya. And so the foundational principle of Vrindavan, or to become an associate of Krishna in Vrindavan, is selfless service in the wake of the gopis or in the wake of the Vrajvasis. Whether it is gopis or Yashoda Maiya or Nand Maharaj or the servants of Krishna or his friends, they are all completely dedicated, surrendered to Krishna without any tinge of Aishwarya Bhava. And so basically we'll see that even Narottam Das Thakur in his Pratna, I believe, I don't remember, but he mentions, you must have heard about the song, the most popular song, Shri Rupa Manjari Pada, Se Mora Sampada, right? So we'll see that how it is not even Radha and Krishna, but Narottam Das Thakur being an Manjari, I think Champak Manjari probably. So in his identity as a Manjari, he is actually glorifying Rup Manjari, and he's making Rup Manjari as the object of the central object of affection. So he's not even like saying that, okay, Radha and Krishna are my goal. He's saying that Sri Rupa Manjari Pada, that the lotus feet of Rupa Goswami is the object and the goal of my life. Okay. And so this is actually the essence of Raganuga Bhav or Raganuga Bhakti, that the associate of the Lord in Vrindavan becomes the object of the center object of our sadhana, seva, and everything. So we are completely dedicated to the service of that associate, and we are serving Krishna through the guidance of that associate. So we have Lalita Sakhi or the Ashta Sakhis, and then we have they are actually leading the Manjaris, and Rup Goswami is the leader of the Manjaris, and Rup Goswami is actually under Lalita Sakhi, and then different Manjaris, they are under different Sakhis. And that's how, similarly, in a similar way, we also have the Sakhas of the Lord, and then we also have the Vatsalya Bhav. So those who want to attain Vatsalya Ras, then Nand Maharaj, Yashoda Maiya, they are the perfect examples. So we should not imitate them, but we have to emulate them. And emulation means we try to attain similar sentiments that they have. Okay. So actually, Raganuga Bhakti will, obviously, we have spoken about the qualification. Raganuga Bhakti obviously cannot start unless and until we are free from anarthas. Because even if we have the greed, but the greed will not be, it won't be sustained for a long time. If we are influenced by the anarthas, if we are carried away by the anarthas, overwhelmed by the anarthas, then we cannot sustain that greed for a longer period of time, which means that it's very difficult to be absorbed, because as we have already discussed, the definition of Raganuga Bhakti is that the absorption is the main element. The complete absorption, that absorption will not come unless and until one is free from the anarthas. So Raganuga Bhakti, the ideal qualification would be at the stage of Ruchi. In the 9-stage process, the ideal stage is the stage of Ruchi, because you are sufficiently purified from the anarthas and you have a taste. And so unless and until you have taste, you cannot be absorbed. So Nishtha is also kind of a borderline, but ideally it would be Ruchi, the basic qualification for Raganuga Bhakti. And obviously, even if you have Ruchi, but if you don't have greed, if you do not have that sufficient greed, then it is going to be very tough. It is going to be difficult to practice Raganuga Bhakti, because Raganuga Bhakti is not based on the intention of the scriptures. Raganuga Bhakti is actually based on the greed that you have, the spontaneous attachment to the Lord. So, so now one time, there is one class by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj on I think it is the disappearance of Loknath Goswami. And at the end of the class, he mentions a very important point, especially connected to the practicing of Raganuga Bhakti. And he says that the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu or the associates of Mahaprabhu have come in a form to teach us what it truly means to follow the footsteps of the Brajvasis. Okay, because now Loknath Goswami was completely surrendered and attached to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was not even attached so much to Vrindavan and or his living in Vrindavan, basically, because he was completely attached to the service of Mahaprabhu. And when he was staying in Vrindavan, he was not liking it. He was thinking that it's an austerity for me, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is in Jagannath Puri, and I have been advised by Mahaprabhu to serve in Vrindavan. So he actually travels from one place to another place in search of Mahaprabhu to associate with him. But Mahaprabhu, whenever he, like for example, he hears that Mahaprabhu is in South India, so he leaves Vrindavan and then he goes to South India. And then he comes to know that, okay, Mahaprabhu just left a few days before. So he gets very anxious about it. And then he hears that he just left for Puri. So then he goes there, and then Mahaprabhu again leaves. And then he comes to know that Mahaprabhu has come to Vrindavan. And so he comes to Vrindavan running. But then he again hears that Mahaprabhu actually just left a few days before. So he's completely in anxiety. And so, like, he's not completely happy in Vrindavan because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually somewhere else. And then Maharaj says that Radha and Krishna, he feels that Radha and Krishna, they are in Jagannath Puri and he's in Vrindavan. So Loknath Goswami, actually, in spite of his desire to be in association of Mahaprabhu, he sacrificed that desire and he actually served Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Okay. And he followed the instructions of Mahaprabhu. So he stayed in Vrindavan because he also had I think, vision by Mahaprabhu where he told him that you should not worry, but you should just execute the order. So he lived in Vrindavan. So he's one of the first Goswamis that actually went to Vrindavan along with Bhugar Goswami. Okay. So basically, all these associates of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they are attached to his service. They are attached to his instructions. It's not that they are attached to the Dham, but they are actually attached to the instructions of the Lord. So basically, this foundational principle is very important of Raganuga Bhakti. We have to understand one thing: unless and until we cultivate this sentiment of selfless service, understanding that we are servant of servant, even if we practice Raganuga Bhakti in an esoteric way or exoteric way, still will not be able to attain success because we have not understood the bhav and mood. Okay, so one thing is very clear, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's devotees, they are coming as sadhakas and they are teaching us how to perform bhakti. And when we understand this fact, that these devotees, they completely had surrendered to the desire of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, to the will of Mahaprabhu, then actually one will start understanding what is Raganuga Bhakti, selfless service. So even if you go to Vrindavan, you go to Braj, you will see how the Brajvasis, they are serving, serving all the people who are coming from outside, especially the guests, and whoever wants any type of help in Vrindavan, the Vrajvasis can give everything to them without any expectation. So, I mean, obviously, we are speaking about the genuine Vrajvasis who are completely dedicated to Radha and Krishna service, and they have sacrificed their life for that. So, there are so many examples of Vrajvasis who are completely selfless. And this is actually the meaning of Vrajvas Bhav, that one is only desiring the welfare, the happiness of others. So, you know, it's a very deep understanding. It is very, it's not so easy to implement this type of mood. We have a greed, or we may have an inclination, but to implement that, principle, the tenets of Raganuga Bhakti, that is very difficult. It is not so easy. And we cannot implement unless and until we are actually associating with advanced Vaishnavas, or those who have developed that kind of mood to a lot of extent. Okay, it's almost impossible actually. So we may be attracted because we are conditioned and we want the best thing. Even in devotional life, we want the best thing, right? Everything, whatever we do, we want the best thing because the ego is there. So the ego desires the best thing always, and we always want to be the number one in whatever we are doing. That's the natural tendency because we are conditioned. So that's why we feel sometimes that, okay, we are ready for Raganuga Bhakti, but we are far away from Raganuga Bhakti because we have not understood the simple fact that a Raganuga Bhakta is completely dedicated, is completely selfless to the desires of Guru, Krishna, and the devotees. They will sacrifice anything for their desire, for their pleasure. So there is no question of having material desires, fulfilling one's material desire, or putting forward one's desires in the forefront. Okay. Whatever desires that we have, that we want to do, whatever material desires that we have, or even if we have spiritual desires, sometimes we may want to serve in a particular way, but the Guru may want us to serve in a different way, not necessarily according to our own expectation. So when we submit to the desire of the Guru, that is actually a practice of Raganuga Bhakti. So this is first and foremost, this is a foundational principle. Unless this is clear, there is no, there is no question of pleasing the Lord and trying to make a show of Raganuga Bhakti. So anyways, I think that's why in ISKCON we don't see so much discussions on Raganuga Bhakti, because I guess that not many devotees are qualified for it. Maybe very, very rare, very few devotees who are free of ego. Okay, so although we want to cultivate the greed that we have, or we want to aspire to follow in the footsteps of a particular associates of the Lord, but at the same time, we also realize that we are not qualified for it, or there are so many anarthas. And that's why there is always a competition between humility and, or maybe you can say honesty and greed, because the greed is actually trying to drive us forward. That, okay, no, let's start somewhere. Let's start the practice of Raganuga Bhakti somewhere. But at the same time, because of our honest, desires, mentality, we can also understand that we are not yet ready for it, or maybe we are taking a very hasty decision to execute Raganuga Bhakti. And that's why it is very important to actually first and foremost take blessings of Guru and to ask them to take their permission whether we can practice certain elements of Raganuga Bhakti. Obviously, it's a gradual process. It's not something that, okay, right from the beginning you start meditating on your form and your services and your dress and your personality and all that. Obviously, that's a very advanced stage. And these things are revealed mostly at the stage of Bhav. at the state of bhav and prem. And before that, obviously, we may get some indication of our identity, but all these finer details, they are revealed at higher advanced stages. So now this, Srila Prabhupada, actually, he has never spoken about these things. If you read his books, Prabhupada, I don't think anywhere Prabhupada mentions that without the exoteric practice of Raganuga Bhakti, one will not go back to Godhead. Although Prabhupada has encouraged that we should think of Krishna 24 hours a day. We should remember, we should chant the holy name 24 hours a day. But Prabhupada has not actually given us the process, like, the systematic process of meditating on one's Siddhadeha. So this concept of Siddhadeha is definitely an external exoteric method. And as discussed in the last class, it was actually given by, I think, it started from Vakreshwar Pandit to Dhyan Chandra Goswami, and then Dhyan Chandra Goswami to Gopal Guru Goswami. That's how the lineage started. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur also mentions that in Jai Dharma about the Ekadash Bhav and the exoteric path of Raganuga Bhakti. But Prabhupada never actually emphasized this. He never even spoke about it so much. But he did encourage devotees to become very Krishna conscious. And I think, obviously Prabhupada said that with time, everything will be revealed to you. So we have already discussed this, that when Bhakti Charu Maharaj asked Prabhupada about Siddhadeha, Prabhupada said that, when the time comes, everything will be revealed to you from a transcendental platform. Okay. So, and Prabhupada also said that the chanting will reveal everything to us, the Sankirtan chanting and all that. So this is a revelation process which is recommended by Prabhupada, and it makes sense because in Kali Yuga, especially in this day and age, we don't have the qualifications and we are too degraded. So to the time of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, there were pure devotees. They were chanting 192 rounds. They were able to focus. They were able to concentrate their minds on, and they were able to absorb completely in Krishna and his pastimes. So 192 rounds was actually not so difficult for them. So you can just imagine the state of the devotees during the era of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and what to speak of now, like who is ready for that? Who is going to do that? So we are even struggling with our 16 rounds of chanting. Then what to speak of 192 rounds? So basically, you see, what is the meaning of 192 rounds? Now, 192 rounds basically means that right from like right from the beginning to end, you are continuously thinking and absorbed and assisting in the pastimes of the Lord. Okay, so it's basically a form of, you can say, like, combination of meditation and chanting. Chanting is revealing. At the same time, there is also some meditation because we are also serving in that the pastimes of the Ashtkali Leela, pastimes of the Lord. So you also tend to serve the Lord in some way, and then obviously you have to meditate because you have not yet attained Vastu Siddhi. So you will be meditating on the services which is given by the Guru. Okay, so in the Siddhadeha, you will be meditating on the services. But this is not possible now, this type of meditation. What to speak of Grihasthas, even sannyasis also, they will not be able to do it in Kali Yuga unless and until they are, completely like absorbed, like transcendentalist. So that's why Prabhupada, I think, he was a very intelligent, he was genius because he has given a path which is focusing more on engaging our senses, especially on the physical level, engaging the senses in the service of Lord. So basically, you keep engaging your senses in the service of Lord, and gradually you will be purified, and then you will be able to remember the Lord. That's the process. And by doing that, gradually your, the anarthas obviously will go away. You'll become detached from the material world. You'll become more absorbed in Krishna's pastimes, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes, and then step by step things will be revealed to us. Even if things do not reveal to us in this life, if you have some important service, then at the time of death, I think it will be revealed to us. If we are ready to go back to God, that would obviously depend on the Lord. So a devotee is only concerned. See, now the foundational principle of Raganuga Bhakti is a devotee is only concerned of pleasing the Lord. So that's why in ISKCON, we are not focusing too much on these aspects because we know the foundational principle is, yeah, everyone wants to aspire to follow in the footsteps of the Vrindavan Vasis, and at the same time to execute their order. So their order is obviously to serve in some way, to be engaged in Krishna service, and depending on how we are instructed, we serve accordingly. Right? So finally, it will be revealed to us. There will be some revelation, and the Lord will reveal to us what He wants us to do in that particular time, and that's how we execute the service. This is the most foundational principle of Raganuga Bhakti. Apart from this, now obviously the devotee also wants to be absorbed. So we don't deny the fact that service does not mean that we are not absorbed. Service does not mean that we neglect the meditation aspect of of sadhana, because the smaranam. So basically, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, these are the most important elements of bhakti, because Shravanam, you hear first, and then whatever you hear, you will chant it. So when you chant that, then naturally you will be able to remember Krishna. So meditation will naturally accompany our chanting and hearing. And obviously, who will not want to meditate? Because the purification happens at external level as well as internal level. And internal level means that we want to absorb our mind also. See, ultimately, bhakti is the function of the mind. It is, you can execute bhakti through the external senses also, but if your mind is somewhere else, or if your mind wants profit, name, fame, or anything which is material, then actually is that really devotional service? It is not, because the goal and the intention of that service is something else. So basically you are making a show of your activities, right? And that's why Krishna is Bhavgrahi and Sargrahi, right? And that's why Krishna also says in the Gita that Yam Yam Vapi Smaran Bhava Tajate Ante Kalavaram, right? And he says that whoever remembers me at the time of death will come to me. So he's not mentioning about the physical activities of sadhana, that whoever chants my name, they will come to me. Whoever will do some service, they will come to me at the time of death. No, because see, externally you may become deaf, dumb, blind, right? And so how will you be able to chant the name? How will you be able to perform the service? And the only thing which will remain at the time of of some accident is actually the mind, because at least that memory is there. Okay, that memory is there. So there is some way Krishna will actually protect your devotion, even if one or the other element is missing, but Krishna will protect the devotion. And devotion is a matter of heart. Obviously, it is a matter of what you are thinking from within, and obviously that is connected to the mind also. So bhakti is the function of the mind, and the practice of Raganuga Bhakti is also a function of the mind, because internally you want to become absorbed. Now the best way to become absorbed is actually through chanting. We have the time during chanting, 16 rounds, or maybe devotees are chanting more rounds, they will have more time. So let's say every initiated devotee has 2 hours of their day where they can actually internalize their Krishna consciousness. They can be absorbed, they can go deep in their own Krishna consciousness, which means that they can think of the qualities, names, qualities, pastime, forms of the Lord, right? In fact, this is what Prabhupada also recommends, that you keep hearing the holy name, and then the spontaneous process is that the form, quality, and pastimes of the Lord will actually come to you. It should come spontaneously. It should not be artificial. And if that happens, it's a good thing. It's a good indication, right? So basically, we want to be absorbed, and for the part, whoever would like to practice Raganuga Bhakti, the starting point will be that they start, they will naturally get that spontaneous, the spontaneous sequence of going from Nam, Rupa, Guna, Leela, like that. And gradually they will become aware. The first thing that they will become aware is of their ras with the Lord, because they will get attracted to a particular pastime of the Lord. That's the first stage, where devotees actually they start feeling that, okay, I would like to be in this particular relationship with the Lord. So the ras is actually revealed to us first. That's the first step. Then after the ras, then what will happen is you start developing some kind of sentiments for the Lord. And then you realize that, okay, whatever sentiments I am, or whatever sentiments is being revealed to me, or I am most comfortable, most attracted to, those sentiments are also present in one of the associates of Krishna. So then what will happen? Immediately you will actually understand that, so I am supposed to follow this associate because that associate and my sentiments are matching, or it is like a kind of completely digestible to my heart and mind. It is syncing with me. So that kind of feelings you will also attain, and you will recognize who is that associate. And after that, obviously, then what is these two elements are the most important. Once you have your rasa, once you know whom to follow, that's it. Then the remaining things are just matter of purification. Then the more you advance at the higher stages, then you will become aware of the finer details also, like what is your name, what is your dress, and what is your color of the body, and then what are the features, what are your services, what are and then obviously we also have some kind of inclination for service in the spiritual world, because we do hear about services that devotees render in the spiritual world, and then we get natural inclination for those services. So these things are actually gradually revealed to us, and it is revealed to us by multiple factors. See, now everything is interconnected. Although it is said that the holy name reveals to us, but the holy name reveals only when we approach the holy name in the proper spirit, which is in the mood of servant of servant of servant, in the humble, with all humility. And the holy name will reveal after the mercy of the Guru. Once the holy name sees that, okay, you have satisfied my representative, then the holy name will reveal to us. So unless and until, so we know that, okay, we cannot approach Krishna directly, and then we have to approach Krishna through a devotee. So unless and until a devotee is pleased with our service, how can the Lord reveal to us? And actually, this is also a mandate in the practice of Raganuga Bhakti, that if you want to accept someone as your guide, or someone you would like to emulate, right? Then what is the meaning of that? You cannot think that, okay, I will try to go beyond this associate. I will try to supersede that devotee. You cannot have these kind of feelings unless and until you have become completely subservient to that associate. That mood is not developed. How can you even think of Raganuga Bhakti? So basically, unless and until we become humble, we want an authority to follow, there's no question of practicing of Raganuga Bhakti. So this is, see, that's why it is mentioned. Prabhupada, I think in Chaitanya Charitamrita, one purport, Prabhupada says that one has to sufficiently surrender, sufficiently please one Guru, and only after that the practice of Raganuga Bhakti will actually awaken. Only after that greed will come. Genuine greed will actually manifest. Okay, so these are some of the aspects of practicing Raganuga Bhakti. Now I would like to give some examples that how everything is actually revealed to us. So this is a very interesting example of Ajamil, which I just recently heard from podcast of Shivram Maharaj. And so Maharaj was mentioning that the pastime of Ajamil everyone knows from the Srimad Bhagavatam, but the different Puranas also describe the pastime of Ajamil. And basically it gives more details also. What actually happened, why Ajamil was saved. Okay, although he was actually committing sins, lot of sins, along with his chanting of the offenseless chanting of Narayan, he was also committing sins after that. Then how was he saved by Vishnu? So in one of the Puranas it is mentioned that Vishnu actually was thinking how should I save Ajamil? Because he has executed service in the past. And so the Lord actually wanted to protect his devotion. And he was feeling grateful to the services of Ajamil. So in the beginning, we know that how Ajamil was actually, he was a Brahmana, right? And then he also was, and Brahmana, obviously, the main duty of Brahmana is to worship the Saligram Sila and perform some kind of devotional service, right? So in the past, he had performed some devotional service, and the Lord actually recollected. I mean, he was thinking about how to save Ajamil because of that. So in that Purana, it is mentioned that after thinking like this, Vishnu sent Lomasha Rishi to his house. Okay. Vishnu arranged a devotee to be sent to his house in order to deliver him. And because of Lomasha Rishi, now Jamil already had 9 sons. And the last one was actually named Narayan. We know that he was named Narayan, right? But how was he named Narayan? Because this Rishi actually recommended him to keep the name of his son Narayan. Right? So because of that, because of devotee's mercy, he actually named his son Narayan. And then obviously we know the consequence of that. So later on, the Vishnu Dutas appeared and he was protected, and then he was given another chance and ultimately perfected his life, went back to Godhead. Right? So you see that basically what is the meaning of this? So Maharaj was mentioning in the context of that all the devotees, they should give an excuse to Krishna to deliver us from this material world. They have to give some excuse to the Lord that why he should deliver us from this world. And then Maharaj was saying that actually most of us in Kali Yuga, we cannot do sadhana bhakti. It is extremely difficult. And that's why to a great degree, we are Kripa Siddh. Okay. So now if you want to attain the Kripa of the Lord, you have to give him some excuse. And so Maharaj was actually glorifying the Sankirtan devotees. He was saying that book distributors, preachers, Prabhupada actually somehow wanted it. So, he heavily emphasized that. So that's why if we please Prabhupada sufficiently, then automatically Krishna will get an excuse to save us. And then we are delivered from that. Okay. So now see, if we are dedicated to the worship of Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan, then even if we are unable to practice the esoteric and exoteric path of Raganuga Bhakti in its full manifested form, still we'll be able to attain the Lord. And it may take some more time. And as we know that, there is also mentioned, Prabhupada also says in a couple of places that if you want to attain Goloka, then you have to take birth in Bhoma Vrindavan, where Krishna has performed his pastime. So after leaving the body, the devotee actually attains Bhoma Vraj, where Krishna is present. He's performing the pastimes. And then the devotee is getting trained to higher stages of rasas, because we know that, Bhav, Prem, and then Sneha, Man, Pranaya, Rag, Anurag, Bhav, Mahabhav. These are the higher stages of bhakti. So in order to get trained and to advance to reach those higher stages, one has to be trained under the direction of the Vrajvasis. Okay. And so Krishna can make that arrangement. Okay. And he can train us, he can uplift us, and then, we can go to Goloka. Now, obviously, associating with Krishna in Bhoma Vrindavan or Goloka, there is no difference. Right? So, so in that sense, we can understand that how the identity of the devotees can also be revealed if the Guru is pleased sufficiently, and that will give an excuse to Krishna to reveal to us. Now, another example from Srimad Bhagavatam is that of Dhruv Maharaj. We know that Dhruv Maharaj, actually the intention of Dhruv Maharaj was to attain a planet which is higher than that of Brahma, right? But when he was executing under the direction of Narad Muni, he attained the Lord. He basically saw the Lord, right? Face to face. But he was not able to glorify the Lord because he didn't know what is pure devotional service. But then what happened? The Lord, with his conch shell, he just touched the head of Dhruv Maharaj, and suddenly all the purpose of the Vedas, the essence of bhakti was actually manifested in his heart. And then Dhruv Maharaj started offering prayers to the Lord. And similar instance with Prahlad Maharaj also. So Prahlad Maharaj also approached Narasimhadev, but then Narasimhadev actually placed his hand on the head of Prahlad Maharaj, and then he also became very realized. Okay, he began to glorify prayers to Lord Narasimhadev. So you'll see that ultimately, if the Guru is pleased, if the devotee is pleased, then Krishna will reveal to us like this. It's not necessary that we may have to practice exactly. So scripture rules, regulations, they are definitely there to guide us. They are, but they are also contextual. It is not necessary that every devotee will actually get the same result by following the same thing, because different devotees, they will attain different results and different methods. They will execute different methods, because not every one of them is the same. Everyone is different, and that's how we have variety. So otherwise, the entire philosophy becomes Mayavad, Advaitvad, where you have, you expect that every devotee is one. They don't have any differences. Everyone thinks like the same. Then what is actually the great thing? I mean, you will not have any rus. You will not have any enjoyment through that, because if you, unless and until you are able to experience different moods, flavors, it will not give so much pleasure to us. So that's why we see that Krishna and Balram, they also differ, because they are two personalities, and Krishna wants that. He does not want that Balram should become like a robot. Whatever he says, okay, he will do that. Now Balram, the entire idea of Balram opposing Krishna is for Krishna's pleasure. Krishna wants like that, so that he can actually enjoy that ras with Balram. Being an elder brother to him, Krishna can enjoy that ras. So this is actually the significance of variety in Krishna consciousness, that although we have a general rule, we have a path, but the path will actually take different turns for different devotees, and you cannot generalize it. So there is no mathematical formula for reaching back to Godhead. What may work for one devotee, it will not work for another devotee. Okay, like that. So basically, there are so many statements of Prabhupada where he says that if a devotee is serving Krishna 24 hours a day, or if he's absorbed, or like at least he has given his life to Krishna, this one life to Krishna, then he is guaranteeing that they will go back to Godhead in this lifetime. Prabhupada says this many times. So what does it mean? Now, it may not be necessary that these devotees may be practicing Raganuga Bhakti externally, but Krishna may be revealing to them the appropriate time. So, yeah, I mean, Vishwanath Thakur says that to start practicing this Raganuga Bhakti, or before meditating on Radha and Krishna, it's very important to actually meditate on Gauranga and Gaur Leela. So that's why he has also written this Ashtakaliya Leela Smaranam of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And that is very useful for devotees who would like to progress or would like to start meditating on Radha Krishna. So before that, they can actually start meditating on Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, Ashtakaliya Leela Smaranam Stotram of Mahaprabhu. Okay, and that will purify our heart, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is actually our connection to Radha and Krishna in Kali Yuga. There is no other way. Chaitanya, Gaur, Nityananda, they are actually the connection. Without their shelter, we cannot attain Radha and Krishna in this life, in Kali Yuga especially, and especially in such a short lifetime. Okay, that's impossible. So Gauranga is actually the way. In fact, Prabodhananda Saraswati Thakur also glorifies Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his associates to a great extent by saying that, like, we are not even concerned about Krishna's glance, but we are just concerned about the glance of the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And just by taking shelter of the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu, automatically the love for Srimati Radharani will manifest in our heart. The love of Radharani will actually overflood our heart. Okay, and this is actually the process for Gaudiya Vaishnav devotee, and obviously for ISKCON devotee, we also basically we want to serve Prabhupada's desire. We want to fulfill Prabhupada's desire of preaching and somehow serving in a physical form, and at the same time also absorbing ourselves in Krishna consciousness, in Gauranga consciousness, and that's how actually we'll be able to practice. So basically, in ISKCON, the way it can be practiced is, during the time of chanting of 16 rounds, and then obviously whenever possible we can think. So see, everything starts gradually. It does not mean that you are just 24 hours absorbed in the pastimes of the Lord for Raganuga Bhakti. You can start gradually. You can start, in the time of chanting is the most crucial one. So one may start with that, and then deity worship is also very essential element for one to absorb oneself. In fact, Prabhupada said in one letter or somewhere in, I think I've read in, I think it is in Siddhanta Prabhu's memories. So one place Prabhupada says that a deity, Pujari is extremely fortunate because he is situated in his constitutional position. Why? Because he is waking up the Lord, he is dressing the deity, he is offering food to the Lord. So whatever activities are going in the spiritual world, the Pujari is able to do it in this material world itself. And that's how he's actually, in one lifetime, he can finish off and he can go back to Godhead. So the Pujari is very fortunate. He is very much situated in constitutional position of serving the Lord. And now obviously this is, see, the difficulty in the practice of Raganuga Bhakti is that it requires a lot of concentration and requires determination and obviously freedom from anarthas. It is best ideally executed in holy places like Vrindavan Dham, Mayapur Dham, Jagannath Puri Dham, where we are free from all disturbances, where we don't have any kind of anxiety, and obviously first and foremost that we have to be free from responsibilities, right? So that is most important. Now see, about responsibility, you will see that okay, Grihasthas, they have responsibilities, and many Grihasthas, in fact most of the Grihasthas, they will work till the age of 70, probably 60, 70s, right? And then maybe they have another 10 or 20 years to live. So how will it be possible for the Grihasthas to actually think about these things, right? That's why we should not artificially imitate these things, but we should just follow the process which is given by Prabhupada. We should try to become as much absorbed as possible in whichever ashram we are at, but at the same time we should also finish our responsibilities, and a time should come when we should be completely detached from the material world. We should not be thinking about what I will be doing, what I will be, where I will be going, and how much money will I have, and who will do this, who will do that. If these things are going on in the mind, then obviously we can never practice Raganuga Bhajan. So who can actually practice Raganuga Bhakti in ISKCON? Although we have discussed so many points, but the conclusion is that who can practice Raganuga Bhakti properly? It's not possible unless and until we are detached from the material world, we are free from responsibilities, and we are able to absorb ourselves, we are able to concentrate ourselves or meditate, because meditation is a very important element in Raganuga Bhakti. Okay, so it's going to be very tough. It's not so easy, and that's why we have to go gradually. When the time comes, we basically have to focus on being detached from the material world. So now, and this is also so difficult. It is not so easy. If you are very opulent, then all of a sudden you just renounce things. That will also disturb your Krishna consciousness. It's not so easy actually. So we have to have the cultivation. We have to associate with devotees. We should try to become detached from the material world as much as possible. Then only we'll be able to focus on these things. Otherwise, these things are very idle things. It's not something which is cheap. We have to pay the price for it. Yeah, and then finally, I just wanted to mention one point, that even if we have the greed, okay, how do we know that the greed is actually a genuine greed? So even if we develop a greed to attain Radha and Krishna, to follow the footsteps of Brajvasis, how do we know it's a genuine greed? So one of the symptom of that genuine greed is that that greed is constant, it is steady. So it does not, like for example, you develop attraction for a particular passion of the Lord, and then after a few days, after a few months or few years, you feel that okay, I'm not comfortable with this ras, but I would like to switch to another ras. So that means there is some problem. You are not actually having that genuine greed. Okay, and that greed has to be steady, which means that right from the beginning to the end, you know that okay, you have a rasa and you are cultivating that rasa in the future. You are steady. You are not. You don't want to compromise on that. You don't want to sacrifice that rasa. That means that becomes your sthayi bhav. Sthayi bhav means permanent mellow. So it is not a transitive mellow, which is like temporary. It is permanent. That's why it is called sthayi bhav. So that greed is steady, and at the same time, obviously, you ultimately you aim to, or you strive to become more and more detached from the material world and more absorbed in the Lord's pastimes with time. So this is also another indication of how the greed is actually going to be steady or genuine greed. Okay. There are some of the symptoms of how you can identify whether the greed is actually steady or not, genuine or not. And yeah, but one thing, we have to understand that in spite of relishing the taste in the practice of Raganuga Bhakti or in the process of Krishna consciousness, we have to always know one thing, that ultimately it is the desire of the Lord, how He wants us to serve. So then there is a classic example in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, where Daruka is actually fanning the Lord, right? And then Daruka is fanning the Lord and he's developing symptoms of ecstasy. And he's suppressing those symptoms because that is causing a disturbance to his service, right? So because he knows that if I will express my symptoms, then it will actually become a disturbance to my service. I will not be able to fan the Lord properly. That's why he suppresses it, and he gives priority to the service. So depending on the desire of the Lord, we have to give priority. If the Lord wants us to give priority to relishing Krishna consciousness and becoming a Bhadnanandi, then we have to become like that. So we have examples of Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. We have examples Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. So there are so many Bhadnanandis also. By their example, because we need these types of example also, where we can see that how one can be completely absorbed in chanting, in bhakti. So they have that kind of taste. So they are setting an example that Krishna consciousness is giving me such a taste, such a high taste, that I am not aware of anything else in this world. Okay, they are completely like out of this world. So basically, Krishna wants them to relish that taste, just to set an example for others. So that also becomes a preaching in one form, because they are also setting an example for others to follow. So depending on the desire of the Lord, we serve accordingly, and that is actually a foundational principle of Raganuga Bhakti. And then obviously we have finer details which will be revealed to us with time, right? So yeah, so all right, with this, I think we can conclude the class. So any questions or comments?
So now this is like a clarifying question. So whatever we read in Nectar of Devotion about Raganuga Bhakti, it is meant to be like a guiding, it's like meant to be a guide of what it is to be in that, like what is that, what is the nature of Raganuga Bhakti, but there is no need to, be anxious about trying to, artificially develop it. See, what your essence of your class is that if we are following our guru's instructions, and engaging our senses in executing and carrying out those orders, then eventually it is going to come. Raganuga Bhakti will like arise or awaken in the heart. So that is the essence of your class, right? Like that is the essence of what Prabhupada is telling us.
Yeah, okay. So first and foremost, in order for Raganuga Bhakti to be awakened, we must have sentiments for Krishna in Vrindavan. I mean, that should be the goal that we want to attain the Lord in Vrindavan. If some devotee they have they want to attain the Lord in Vaikuntha or in Dwarka or Mathura, then there's no question of Raganuga Bhakti, right? So that is the most important thing. That who is the ultimate goal, whether it is Vrindavan, Krishna in Vrindavan, or Krishna in Mathura, Dwarka, and then after that, obviously, at all stages we are going to follow the instructions of Guru, but one of the instructions of Guru is also to be absorbed in Krishna consciousness. So that greed, now we know that okay, our object of worship is Radha and Krishna in Vrindavan. So that greed has to also awaken in us. Now it is, now you get it from, from you continue from the past life, or you get it from those who have the greed. Okay. And so once you get the greed, then obviously you also start thinking about it. It's a natural thing for any devotee. They will actually would like to know what is the relationship with the Lord. So it is not, I mean, so these things are like important because, when you have the greed, you also would like to understand these things. You also like to progress in this particular area. But obviously the priority and the preference is Krishna's desire. So even if, so we may consult the Guru, and we may ask the Guru that, okay, this is what I feel, these are my sentiments. And I'm constantly with time, I'm studying in my thoughts, in that feelings and sentiments. And so is it okay, if I start meditating? I think the Guru will guide us, and certain things will also be revealed to us in the form of dreams, in the form of revelation from our Gurujan. So those things will be revealed to us actually. Now it may happen before our before this life, before the end of this life, or it is possible that it may not happen also. I mean, we may realize certain things, but there are more details required for our relationship to be revealed that may take us another birth also. So what is actually important is service. Basically, that's why we say that okay, service is actually the most important goal of any devotee. And the entire life of the Brajvasi is also about service to Krishna. They are not thinking anything about their own relishment of Krishna consciousness. They are just thinking about the pleasure of Krishna. Each and every second, each and every moment, they are just thinking of the Lord's pleasure. So basically, we must be trained in this area also, the foundational principle, right? That okay, I have so many material desires, and I'm trying to sacrifice certain material desires, but then I'm not yet completely surrendered. So what about that? So basically, then what will happen? Krishna would also want us to get trained, and he would also want us to get purified in the process. So how can he give us that revelation when we are not even actually ready to enter in his pastimes, right? So the desire to become purified. See, there is honesty and there is humility. These are two different things. For a sadhaka, there is honesty. For us, for Nitya Siddhas, there is humility. They are thinking that okay, we are so sinful, we are, we are even fallen than the worm in the stool. They are thinking because of humility, but ours is a very natural condition. We are expressing honestly that this is our condition, and it's a fact. For them, it is not a fact. They are feeling like that because of their intense humility, because of their intense praying for the Lord. But we are mostly in that cycle of conditioning where we are actually honestly dealing with our desires, dealing with our material desires. So, so it is not necessary that Krishna will actually reveal to us all these details. Unless, I mean, that's why I said that, only the mercy of a pure devotee can actually interfere. Then it is possible that Krishna will reveal to us these things and he will call us back to Godhead. But you have to give an excuse to the spiritual master and Krishna also. And for that, you have to satisfy the spiritual master. This is actually so important. Otherwise, I think any sincere devotee would feel, or they would think that the first question that they will actually face is, am I ready to go to Krishna? And honestly speaking, they will think that, okay, I'm not ready actually, because I have so such and such material desires yet, and I'm not completely surrendered yet. So how can I go to Krishna? So their prayer will be more to get purified, and for that they will pray to the Lord that please, whatever is best for my purification, you arrange like that. So they will not say that, okay, Lord, please call us. I'm waiting for the day when you call me, in spite of my disqualifications. Yeah, I mean, it is possible. See, it cannot be demanded. This is my point. It will be possible because, like if you have pleased the Guru thoroughly, then the Guru himself will recommend to Krishna, and then Krishna will actually call us. He can, fill in the gap. Even if we are lacking in certain areas, he can fill in the gap. But we ourselves cannot demand the Lord. We, in fact, as a sincere devotee, we should think like this, that, okay, I'm not yet ready. There's so much of purification to be, done. So let the Lord allow me another life, or, whatever he desires. So I think this is actually the right mood. And obviously we continue our service. We don't leave our service, even though these things are not revealed to us, or these details are not revealed to us. But at least, even if this foundational principle is actually there, that may also actually attract the mercy of the Lord. So in spite of the challenges, the difficulties, up and downs of Krishna consciousness, like, for example, Brahma also is glorifying the Lord, and then he says that Tadenu Kampa Susamikshamano, that a devotee who actually understands that he's suffering because of his past misdeeds, and in spite of that he continues to offer obeisances to you and worships you, then that devotee has rightful claim to your abode. Right? So just by patiently tolerating all these difficulties, challenges that we have in Krishna consciousness, and continuously being steady, that can also attract the mercy of the Lord, and then the Lord can also reveal to us with time. I mean, the idea is that just keep serving the Lord. So you have material desire, whether akamo sarva kamo va mokshada udarati tivrena bhakti yogena yajate purusham param. Whether you are full of material desires, whether you have no desires, whether you want to get liberation, whether you don't want liberation, or you want material sense gratification, in all circumstances worship the Purusham Param, Supreme Lord. And so if we continue to do this, if you continue to do the sadhana and seva, then now see, one of the effect of doing something on a steady basis is that it will destroy the anarthas also. Like, for example, when we commit offenses to the holy name, the rectification for that is one should continuously chant the holy name. Right? Now, continuously chanting the holy name means basically you are steadily chanting the holy name. Does not mean that you, at some point of time, you are chanting many rounds, and then you go down, you chant less number of rounds, and after some time again you come up and go down like that. No, it's not a wave kind of a thing, but it's a line. It's a stable line, steady. So that steadiness itself actually will destroy so many things. It will destroy anarthas. It will destroy all the sinful reactions. So the steadiness in Krishna consciousness is very important. If we are able to do it, then everything is possible by the Lord's mercy. Okay, because the Lord is also seeing that in spite of so many problems, we are able to we don't give up our primary desire, which is basically serving the Lord, right? So this is very important. So I hope it makes sense.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. You were talking about how bhakti is the function of mind. So could you elaborate more on that? Because usually we hear from the Shastras that one should engage all their senses in the service of the Lord, like Ambrish Maharaj, for example. And we see that even Srila Prabhupada says that even if one sense is not engaged, then it's easy for one to get deviated. So could you explain more?
Yeah, so actually, in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, it is mentioned that Shravanam, I mean, so when it is said that, one of the limbs of bhakti can give us perfection, it does not mean that we can neglect the other limbs. It just means that for that particular devotee, the foremost limb or the most important limb is that particular limb, which means that he has inclination for that particular limb more than any other limbs of bhakti. Because see, it is very clear that without Shravanam, there is no possibility of understanding the tattva of the science of bhakti. You, unless and until you are like, you don't understand the principles, the foundation principles of bhakti, you cannot advance in spiritual life. So Shravanam is actually the beginning, right? And then Shravanam is accompanied by chanting, which is Kirtanam. And when you do this together, then Smaranam will arise. Okay. So now regarding your question that, okay, unless and until you engage every sense in the service of Lord. So see, basically, we have to understand that for a sadhaka, it is very important to engage all the senses. And at the same time, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur and Srila Prabhupada also mentions that the three senses are very important, like the genital, the tongue, and the belly. They are in one line. So and ultimately amongst them, the tongue is actually the most important, because the tongue is actually the one which is going to control the other senses. Right? So and then Srila Prabhupada mentions many times that the tongue can be controlled by chanting the Hare Krishna mantra and by having prasadam. That's the way you control the tongue. So yeah, so basically it's very important, although we have all the different senses and we try to engage each and every sense in the service of Lord, but then we also know that amongst them the tongue is actually the most ferocious. So we have to control the tongue, and obviously in terms of speech also, because speech is a very important factor. And the best speech is basically chanting of Hare Krishna or talking about Krishna and like that. That's how you actually can control the speech. And by prasad, you can actually control the urges of the genitals. So you'll see that once you control the tongue, then all the other senses are actually aligned. They are kind of controlled in one sense. Okay. Now Ambrish Maharaj example. So he is an example of a devotee who has executed all the limbs of bhakti. Right? But then there are other examples where the devotees, they are actually glorified because of only one limb of bhakti. Now, obviously, Parikshit Maharaj is known for Shravanam. Sukhdev Goswami is known for Kirtanam, right? But do you think that Sukhdev Goswami did not hear the Bhagavatam? He heard it from Vyasdev. So Shravanam is always there. And as such, but they have given their 100% to that particular limb. That's how they have attained perfection. Okay. And this is actually the potency of each and every limb of bhakti, that each limb of bhakti is so potent that if you execute only that particular limb, then you can attain the Lord through that. Okay. But I think it is assumed that you are performing, you are executing that limb offenselessly. So in olden days or in previous yugas, devotees were very pure. Okay, they were naturally very pure, and I think they naturally perform pure devotional service without offenses. So that's why, in spite of executing only one limb, they were able to attain perfection in that limb. Okay, but in Kali Yuga, obviously, because we don't remember what we hear, and we have short memory, we have short lives. That's why we need multiple factors. We also require deity worship in Kali Yuga. That's why Prabhupada also incorporated deity worship along with the Bhagavad Vidhi. So Panchratrik Vidhi is all equally important for us because we are not situated on a translated platform. We are coming from the background of Sudras. So it's very important. Okay. Yeah. So ideally, yeah, I mean, for sadhakas, it is very important that they connect their senses, each and every sense, to Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, it is possible, no? Because we have a tendency to fall down. I mean, we are already fallen. And then if we do not engage our different parts of the body in the Lord service, then we will be engaging that limb in some other material things, right? So that way, yeah, it can be a deviation also. That's why Prabhupada recommended that we try to engage each and every senses in the Lord service. That is actually very important for sadhakas. So that's why Prabhupada actually incorporated all these 9 limbs of bhakti in ISKCON. If you observe carefully, Prabhupada actually incorporated all these things. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Sakhyam, Vandanam, and Atma Nivedanam. All these 9 limbs, Prabhupada is very nicely incorporated in ISKCON, and through the 5 most potent limbs of bhakti, which is chanting of the holy name, and then associating with devotees, Srimad Bhagavatam recitation, deity worship, and then Vrajvas. You will see that these limbs, they will cover all other 9 limbs also, right? I mean, like you perform deity worship, you are going to temple, you are offering obeisances, and your eyes are engaged. Then Shravanam, obviously ears are engaged, and then nose is engaged in smelling the incense, smelling the garland of the Lord, and so everything is engaged for sadhakas. That's how Prabhupada has designed ISKCON, right? So it's a safe path basically.
Prabhuji, you were saying bhakti is function of mind. So do you explain that?
Yeah. So see, ultimately, engagement of senses means that you have to engage the mind. See, the point is your intention and your because this is a gross body, and gross body, let's say for example, like you are doing everything, you are doing all the external activities, you are engaging every sense in the service of Krishna, but if your mind is somewhere else, or you have some ulterior motive behind what you are doing, then is it devotional service? It's basically a semblance of devotion. It's actually not pure devotional service. In fact, you may get some agyat sukriti through that, but the intention is actually the most important thing. That's why Krishna is seeing the bhav also, right? Whereas a person externally may not be doing anything, but internally in his mind, he may be completely absorbed in the Lord. So Krishna will be pleased by that devotee. So basically, see, there are stages of purification in the path of bhakti, where it begins with external activity. Okay. Then it goes, so basically external activities, then it becomes vachik, and then it becomes mansik. So what happens is you are steady externally, but in your behavior you are not good. Okay, you are not good in your behavior, your speech is not good, you're not able to control your tongue, but externally you are steady in your services. You are doing your chant, you are chanting your 16 rounds, you are performing your services, but you are not able to control your tongue. So Vachik aspect is still not purified. You are getting purification from the external level. Now the advanced purification will be, it will go to the Vachik platform. So basically, along with your external services, you start behaving properly with the devotees, you start speaking nicely, you start glorifying the devotees. There is a transformation. Okay. And then the most difficult part of purification is the mansik, because you may be behaving properly in the mode of goodness. Like there are some devotees, naturally from the beginning, they are in the mode of goodness. So it is not so difficult for them to actually speak with others in a soft tone, in a, with humility and all. It may be a show of that. And at the same time, they are also performing their bhakti externally. They are doing all the following the regular principles. They are chanting 16 rounds. They are performing services. But in the mind is somewhere else. So they are not yet purified in mansik level. So the ultimate stage is actually mansik. So mansik means that you are actually, your intention is to please the Lord, and you are thinking about the Lord while doing the service. Otherwise, you actually disconnect yourself. You are lovingly thinking. See, what are the Brajvasis doing all the time? When Krishna is not there, okay, along with the service, they are not talking with the Brajvasis and gossiping. Okay, what happened? Did you see this? Did you see that? So how is your relative? How is your friend? No, they are just completely talking about Krishna, and they are just thinking about him 24 hours a day. Right? So this is mansik. So this is also, in fact, this is actually the most essential aspect of bhakti, because if your mind is somewhere else, if your intentions are not clear, then external activities, they become only a semblance of devotion. Correct? So the soul is actually, the soul wants to connect with the Lord. And when the soul loves the Lord, naturally the soul wants to think about the Lord. So the soul will definitely, the functioning of the mind will also play a very important role in this. In fact, the most important role. Right? And then even if you don't have the senses to perform external activities, but still if your heart is thinking about Krishna, then Krishna will will bestow the highest mercy. Right? Because Krishna knows the heart, he knows the intention of that devotee. So like for example, Bali Maharaj, also in the pastime of Bali Maharaj, you'll see that when Vamandev was near him, he wanted to actually offer obeisances to Vamandev, but he could not, because Shukracharya was actually against Vamandev, and he was not able to offer obeisances, and he offered obeisances in his mind. So externally he was not able to do it, but the intention was to actually offer obeisances. And that is what Lord actually saw that. That's how he became known as the Bhavagrahi. Okay. Similarly, when Vasudeva was actually inside the prison house in Mathura, as soon as Krishna took birth, Vasudeva actually got an intense desire to distribute cows and distribute charity to the Brahmanas. But he was not able to do it. So what he did, he donated thousands of cows in charity to the Brahmanas in his mind. And when he was released from the prison house, he actually did it. So basically, see, whatever is in the mind has to become manifested. It is not that, okay, I think that, okay, I love someone, but I don't do anything practical for that person. Right? And same way, you do something practical for the person, but your intention is actually you have some ulterior motive, or you don't even think about that person. Then what kind of love is that? You forget that person. Right? So both are important, but ultimately love is the matter of heart, and heart is not an external function of the body. It's an internal function, right? It's connected with the soul. So that sense, the thinking process is, just because the thinking process is actually manifested in the mind, that's why we say that bhakti is the function of mind, because it is connected to the heart. So the heart is actually connected to our thought process, our desires, our intentions. These are all manifested in the mind. It cannot, and then obviously it is executed outside. So we have to, yeah, I mean, if you remember, then in nectar devotion classes, we were discussing about two types of bhakti. One is Bhavarupa Bhakti and one is Cheshta Rupa Bhakti. So you'll see that Bhavarupa Bhakti is a function of the mind. It is meant for advanced devotees, because advanced devotees, they are absorbed. Their consciousness is completely thinking about Krishna. But Cheshta Rupa Bhakti is something which is connected to the external practice of bhakti, using our senses, right? But you'll see that, this Bhavarupa Bhakti comes at the stage of Bhav, and Cheshta Rupa Bhakti starts right from Sadhana Bhakti, and it manifests into Bhav Bhakti like that. So now does it make sense?
Yes, Prabhuji. Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah.
And also intelligence is also important, right? Because it is
Intelligence is actually the driver. Yeah,
driver
I mean,
for the mind.
that's how you can control the mind.
Mm.
So you are leading the mind in different directions. See, that's how intelligence is a way to discriminate and way to control and handle things, or handle the mind. So you can, that's why, see, the mind can be distracted. It can go in some other direction, but you can bring it back using intelligence. That's why, this in the Bhagavad Gita, we have this picture of the horses with the reins, the chariot driver, and the charioteer. So they are all together. So compared to the horses are compared to the senses, and then the reins are compared to the mind, and the driver is compared to the intelligence, right? And the person who is sitting, charioteer, is actually the soul. So it's a great analogy.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Yeah, because see, this is something that will be like, as I said earlier, that in case, if there is an accident or if you lose one of your limbs, but still, you may not lose your memory, and you may not lose your intelligence, unless until like you meet with an accident which will destroy your brain, or you are in a coma situation. Then only it may be there, possible. Otherwise, you'll see that in most of the cases, remembrance is something that which will remain with us forever. I mean, compared to other limbs or other senses that we have. Or you can also say like this, that even if we have the senses, but at the time of death, most of the senses, they are not functioning properly. Like we are not able to see properly, we are not able to hear properly, right? With old age, we'll face, we will going to face these difficulties, and that's why only memory or remembrance of the Lord will actually help us. So now, see, who can remember the Lord constantly? Only those who are absorbed, those who are trained in such a way that they can remember the Lord constantly, because they have remembered the Lord throughout their lives. So those who have done that kind of sadhana, they will be able to remember, and they will be able to relish it. If you try to artificially remember the Lord, it will only remain for a certain period of time, but then it will go away. You will actually, your interest and everything will come from your mind, your the way you are trained in the material world, the whatever attachments that you have in this material world, that will lead you to different destinations. And that's why it is very important to have a very strong sadhana, so that you will be able to remember the Lord for a longer period of time. So there are more chances of remembering Lord at the time of death, because death is a very sudden process. It can come instantaneously, or it can also take years. So now to have that kind of absorption of generally a old person, they are suffering. They are not able to walk properly. They are not able to sit properly. They are not able to use their hand properly. Right? Every limb of the body is kind of becomes dysfunctional. So then the only thing which remains with them is actually the memory, or it is basically the remembrance, and that is basically the meditation. And meditation is basically remembering the Lord. So that's how we can understand. That's why this process actually, this Raganuga Bhakti and all that, it's actually very important in one way, because once you become absorbed in the Lord, then you have achieved the goal, because you are just thinking of the Lord, right? But you also cannot say that, okay, just thinking of the Lord means that you don't do any service. That's also hypocrisy in one sense, right? Because you just like, so we'll see that how Rajvasis, they are serving the Lord practically 24 hours a day, along with remembering the Lord. That's complete love. There's no lack of love. That is complete manifestation of love. Bhav Rup Bhakti, Cheshta Rup Bhakti. Okay, so any other question or comment? Okay, all right. So thank you, devotees, for joining. And with this, we are ending our live streaming and recording also.